15 fan bases just got good news. One contender may be out of the race entirely. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction joins. We talk the loss of Jake Retzlaff from the Big 12 perspective. Is that good for everybody else? And is it that bad for BYU? Also, Pac-12 picking up Memphis, Tulane, maybe even USF. That should be the next move. And then Phil Steele has Texas Tech at 6, BYU at 8, Cincinnati at 9, Baylor and Utah going to the Big 12 championship. Let's just make fun of that. Let's just hold space to make fun of that. TJ, let's go. Oh, if you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job.
How would you describe? Is it panic? Not panic, maybe, but like, what's the thought with Retzlaff not being in Provo anymore?
I think BYU is okay. And yes, okay, the response that I've gotten to that is, well, of course you would say that once Jake Retzlaff is actually gone and now everything's fine, it's not doom and gloom. The reason it's not doom and gloom, I believe there were always these blue-colored glasses on him as a quarterback. He failed to throw for over 230 yards in 9 of their 11 wins. The 2 wins in which he did throw for over 230 yards were both not against Power 4 opponents. He was just a field general. He was a decent game manager who had fairly good legs. He was 11th in the Big 12 in QBR. And honestly, as a guy who can't follow the honor code, had a massive black spot over his head coming into this next season, and would be a total distraction for your team no matter what, I think you're fine. I mean, you compound a statistically below average Big 12 quarterback exiting your program, along with someone who carries a ton of baggage, bad storylines, bad headlines, distractions, that person also being out of the program. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Now, is McKay Hillstead as good of a quarterback, or Bear Bachmeier, or any of the 3 that BYU will have in the queue? I can't say that yet. It's very hard to sit here without having seen them and believe they can be even better than what was a below average quarterback. Certainly they could be. What we saw last year with Isaac Wilson at Utah, things can go south immediately when you use a senior signal caller, when you lose that guy that was supposed to lead you to 11 wins or a college football playoff berth. That said, the closer we get to the football season, the more national media outlets I listen to that aren't that high on BYU anyway have them at like 4th or 5th in the Big 12. I still think they're big-time Arlington contenders. But if you're a Cougars fan at this point, if you're a Big 12 fan, I think you still have to be confident that a contender is strong. Just as strong? Maybe not. But I don't think they're losing as much as we have initially reacted.
Yeah, I think like anything, right? You're going to have polar opposites and extremes of opinions. And, you go anywhere from it's no big deal, we're still going 12-0 to,
sure.
Oh my gosh, the sky is falling and we will never compete as a program again, right? And the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? Nowhere near either one of those extremes. I can see the pros and cons. And my take, as somebody who is not as intimately familiar with the BYU program as you are, but as somebody who on our channels, we cover BYU quite a bit because they are one of the more intriguing and fascinating programs in America. Yeah, I think there's the idea of, how many games did Retzlaff go out and win them last year? Right, like I look at other programs and I look at, Jalen Milroe, right? He won Alabama some games last year. You think about that Georgia game early in the year. You think about some of their other contests. He went out and then lost them some games too. You think about some of the bad performances that he had. Tennessee, the Michigan game, certainly with the turnovers. Thomas Castellanos at Florida State. I think he's going to win Florida State some games this year. Unfortunately for me, I think he is going to lose Florida State some games this year. Like, that's just who he was. I don't look at Retzlaff in the same light. I don't look at him in the same way. They won a lot of low-scoring defensive battles last year. They won a lot of games where just kind of their total team effort was able to put them over the hump. And so I can kind of put that on one hand and think that's a very reasonable take, that you're not losing a guy that is so dynamic that he alters everything that you do. I also look at the fact of, on the other hand, his experience is valuable and would have been valuable this year. And so I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibilities to think that there could be a drop off in some areas, even if those guys are just as talented or maybe even slightly more talented from a down to down perspective. You are losing some things from a leadership standpoint. However, the defense is not impacted, right? The skill positions are not impacted. The culture and the way that Sitake has built that program is not impacted. And so to me, it moves the needle, but it doesn't move the needle more than maybe a game, right? If they were a 10-2 team, maybe they're closer to like 9-3. If they were 9-3, maybe they're closer to like 8-4 on the totality of the season. Like that, it doesn't. I mean, Vegas hasn't shifted their win total by 4 games or something extreme. Right. And Vegas is not building castles in the desert because they're bad at handicapping sports. Yeah. And so Vegas didn't move this by an extreme amount. Are there potential setbacks? I mean, could they be 3 games worse when it all said and done? Absolutely. Could they see 0 drop it off at all? Absolutely. And I think those are both realistic possibilities. I don't think they're going 4-8 now, know. And by the same token, I don't think they got rid of Retzlaff and now they're going 12-0. Right? Like I don't think it's that big of a swing. I think the games are one of the margins. But as somebody, so there's my diatribe on it. There's my 3 minutes of rambling. Go ahead and grade it. Does this idiot on college football addiction know what he's talking about?
I don't think this is a Tua situation. I don't think we're going to find our Tua sitting in the QB room at BYU. But it's not impossible to find a guy who's just as good or a hair better when you do consider 11th QBR in the Big 12. You're not losing Josh Hoover or Sawyer Robertson, who both proven to be so solid, or Avery Johnson or Rocco Beck. You're losing a middle of the pack, below average guy who finished analytically behind Garrett Green at West Virginia last season. Shout out Garrett Green. So if you're BYU, the biggest loss with this is kind of that game-winning guy. You saw him lead Oklahoma State last year and Utah, game-winning drives that seemed pretty improbable, and you thought, wow, that's the dude that just has the clutch factor, the clutch gene. It's not something you can actually put into numbers. It's just, wow, he's really good when the game is on the line and you need him to go win it in the final minute. That guy is gone. But so is the guy who threw a couple interceptions in your blowout win against Colorado in the bowl game. And so is the guy who threw a game-sealing interception against Arizona State that gifted the Sun Devils that game. So he lost you that game. He won you the Utah game, maybe, or the officials could have helped a little bit. That remains. It depends on who you ask with that one. He won you a couple of these late games by coming down the field and scoring when it mattered most, but he also lost you a game or two in there as well. Kansas, he was putrid, terrible against a bad Kansas team last year, a 5-7 Kansas team that beat BYU in Provo. So you lost kind of just the middleman. You've lost the average quarterback, and that you're right. It could swing a win or two in either direction.
On the QB to start game 1, I'm going to make you make a prediction. Who do you think has the edge and who gets the start for BYU?
Yeah, if I had to say today, from everything I've heard, it's going to be McKay Hillstead. It sounds like he's the one who's in the backyard with a lot of these receivers, practicing and trying to get ready for the season. I do believe we'll see each in some capacity, especially early on in these blowout games. That doesn't mean rotating quarterbacks. It could mean, hey, we're up by 43 in the second half. Bear Buckmeyer, go get out there. I think McKay Hillstead's your guy to start it off, though.
I look at BYU's schedule just really quickly, and we'll wrap up this segment.
It's easy.
I like the start for BYU. If you're now, you do get into the meat of the Big 12, and we know how balanced the Big 12 is. Yes, absolutely. But it starts out really well for putting a new quarterback in, and you Portland State. It should be an auto win, right? We're having big discussions, if not afterward. I don't plan on us covering the game after the Portland State game. If we do, it's a problem. Stanford coming to town, they're a mess in and of themselves. East Carolina on the road, a little bit of a tricky place to play. They nearly knocked off NC State at home a couple of years ago. That's not as sure of a thing as I think it probably should be, but it still should be a win. And then you get Colorado On the road, what are they going to be? Lots of question marks there. You get West Virginia, again, first-year head coach. Well, kind of first-year head coach, but at least to those players. I think that's a really good first month. That's all in August and September. Certainly, it gets tougher there with Arizona, Texas. There's a lot there afterward, but I think it's the perfect start that you could ask for with putting a new quarterback in.
Yeah, I think so. And that's why I still have a lot of confidence that BYU can get to Arlington and be a Big 12 championship caliber team. That schedule is just, by and large, easy. It's like what Texas got year one in the SEC. Yeah, you have a blip or two, a game or two. You have a bye week between the toughest two matchups you'll see. Give me BYU is still a Big 12 title contender. Today's brought to you by the day is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time's exactly where I go when I want to go to an MLB game. Oh, the Atlanta Braves are playing. That's not that far from me. Cool. I'm going to go. Game Time. That's what they come in. 60% off. You can save up to 60% with their killer last minute deals. I usually buy the tickets in the parking lot. And I didn't know, they're relatively cheap. MLB games are not that bad to get into. So if you're tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal, Game Time zone deals. Pick the best seat in your section for you. You have panoramic seat view. The price you see is always the price you pay. No hidden fees. Game Time guarantee has your back. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. That is guaranteed. On
to the Pac. What are we up to now? Pac 8 at this point? We'll still call it the Pac 12 out of respect, but on to some conference realignment here. What's the latest going down way out west?
Yeah, Memphis, UNLV, Tulane. I mean, the question is now to me, if Washington State and Oregon State's ultimate goal, can I ask you something here? It's your show. Washington State and Oregon State, have we agreed the ultimate goal is to leave $10 million a year in the Pac-12 and get more in the Power Four? Would that not be what they eventually are aiming for?
I mean, it would make sense, right? They're not like mega. They don't have like mega donor bases where they could just survive there and dominate it, right? Just dominate a bad conference because you got a lot of money in. I think about some ACC teams, not the Clemson, Florida State, UNC, maybe even Miami grouping, but I think about some other ACC teams. Would they, if the money's relatively similar for the next 10 years because you're locked in with ESPN, if you're Louisville, do you go to the Big 12 and become a middle, or do you just dominate the ACC because they got a lot of money, right? Like Louisville, I don't think they have like SEC type money, but Louisville's got a lot of bags and stuff. So, but for Washington State and Oregon State, like I don't think they have that insane donor base that can just float them while they dominate a bad conference. Also, you think about access and getting to the playoff and things like that. So yeah, I mean, the goal has to be to build it up to a point of where they are dominating it for a few years and then get out, right? With the next wave of realignment. Maybe that's around that 2030 timeline that we all kind of think it's going to be. Maybe it's earlier. But yeah, the goal has to be, even if you became a part of a division within the ACC and you've got Cal and Stanford out there, and so you're competing there kind of regionally with them. You've got a couple of games maybe on the East Coast. Maybe they reimagine some of that and they have some of those teams play some neutral site stuff. I don't know what they would end up doing, but the goal would eventually have to be to get out, I would think, and maybe a merger with the ACC. Some of their top programs would make sense. You know, I do think what becomes interesting is some of those teams you mentioned, the Tulanes, the Memphises, do they see a path to the Pac-12 faster than getting to the ACC? Because I don't think the ACC is going to do anything until some teams start to leave or have announced destinations. So I think that those teams you mentioned specifically become very interesting and, they're certainly of the non-Power 4 teams that are out there. They're certainly the ones that I think people would be the most interested in, the Memphises and Tulanes, maybe USF thrown in there. Can the ACC get a win there by at least scooping them up before they go to the Pac-12, or will they take another L? You asked me a question, then I asked 7 more hypotheticals. But that's what realignment, I guess, does to our minds.
Well, if we're looking at Memphis and USF and Tulane and where they could possibly go, and really just Memphis and USF, I'm not. Well, Tulane's got New Orleans, and New Orleans is a pretty big market. Those schools are in a conference with Charlotte, and East Carolina and Tulsa and UAB and UTSA. I mean, this is not a very This is not a very strong league. This is not a league I have to stay in. If Washington State and Oregon State, previous Power 5 teams, are on the table and they want me and I can go to that conference and I can find a way to win, I can find a way to compete and find a way to make more money, then it's obvious if you're Memphis, that's where you want to go. If you're USF, that's where you want to go. And if you're Washington State or Oregon State, if you're Kirk Schultz and you're the maestro of all of this, those are the schools you want to add to get to 12. And then say, hey, look, we're not that different from when the Big 12 was at 10 teams and trying to just float until Texas and Oklahoma left and they really found an identity, a true identity once again. What if we can mirror something like that? What if we're not that far off from an ACC that lacks Clemson and Florida State? Because the AAC has no anchor power. There's not one or two schools right now sitting in there where you go, yep, that's a college football playoff contender that I have to stick around for, that aren't named Memphis, Tulane, USF. And so from there, I'd be surprised if these schools like a Memphis aren't looking to get out, aren't looking for somehow, and they have been. They're begging to do the SMU route and go find to do the Cincinnati route, find a bigger conference. They would say yes, I believe, to more money certainly, and possibly more brand power and prowess in a rebuilt Pac-12 if they all rally around the idea that, hey, we can make this thing not as good as it was, obviously, but at least viable and respected in college football, because right now the AAC is not that.
So regionality doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of college football anymore,
does
unfortunately.
It? Right? I mean, can we? Which, not to say that there is a ton of regionality in the AAC. You've got UTSA and FAU.
But for your smaller schools, does it matter? Like, would Memphis? Would they hold out for maybe an ACC invite because of that? Like, their travel budget can't be the same as Cal's or Stanford's or Florida State having to go, whatever, right? Like a Tulane, and I do think Tulane has some okay money there. But do you think would they hold out for that maybe bigger offer as opposed to taking up a Pac-12 thing now, or would they just
Can I answer your question with a question? Can I do what you did to me?
Yeah, of course.
If you're Memphis, who has been begging for relevance the last 2 decades, who's been begging to get into a bigger conference, whether it be the Big 12 or the ACC, just trying, do you have the leverage to hold out? Do you think that that university president can look a commissioner in the eyes and say, nope, we're waiting on the big fish? I'm not sure if that leverage exists.
Is it worth... So is the 10 million versus the 40 million worth the risk, though?
If the 40 million's never going to be available, then anything's worth the risk. You've got to do. And so I think that's where the original point, if we're going to build a thesis here, would lie for me. If you are Memphis, the AAC is not working. It's not going to springboard you into the ACC or the Big 12. If you're Memphis and you can go prove alongside Washington State, we can build a league. We can make things stable in a conference and actually spearhead a real functioning group of 10 or 12 teams. That to me could be the catalyst for saying, okay, Memphis has it figured out. And when the ACC loses a Clemson and a Florida State or a North Carolina or Miami, and they need to add 2 more or 4 more or 6 more, now Memphis looks more reliable and desirable than they did in the AAC, where they have not once been appealing to these major conferences.
Yeah. You're talking about taking baby steps and probably the right path. And I am going balls to the wall with everything.
And they want that. They want to do the balls to the wall. It's just they keep getting denied every time they do it. They're USF, same thing. They're trying to go to a big league, and no one wants them right now until they do something kind of revolutionary, which would be this in my mind. Help rebuild the conference, get that league back to 12, and then the question becomes: if you're Sacramento State, what do we do that? Your Boise State, what do we do all this for? If that falls, if the Pac-12 falls apart, where do they go? And what's the future of those universities? Those are all the big intricacies of what you're looking at out west and now out east. Texas State just did it. Their travel budget is going to really take a hit with having to go up to Pullman or to Corvallis or to Boise, Idaho. But it was worth it. That risk was worth it for more exposure and to hopefully matter in college football.
It is July 3rd, 2025, and we are simultaneously building the Pac-12 back up and then killing it again. So we
capsule, right?
We apologize for the the teardown that we've already kind of constructed for this conference.
Which is good news for those of you at the top of the conference. We are long how you will one day be in the Big 12 of the ACC. But for the rest of you, I'm sorry.
Lambs before the slaughter. So last thing here, Phil Steele, try and get it right. Not that he didn't mess up a last name recently, but we won't go super far into that. Predicted his finish of Big 12 teams. And I thought these were interesting. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Baylor 1, Utah 2, so they rebound. Iowa State 3, Arizona State 4, so they drop a little bit. Kansas State 5. And then we have Texas Tech 6 with all the money they're spending, TCU, and then BYU 8. So he wasn't, and I believe this came out before the Retzlaff.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a believer in them even before the Retzlaff news came out. I could see if you were reactionary and tried to change it, but he wasn't a BYU fan there. If Texas Tech finishes 6th in the conference, I guess that's the best place to start, even though I know you're a Baylor guy. We'll talk about them in a minute too, but just overall thoughts here. If he's right and Texas Tech finishes 6th, that's going to feel weird.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. There is way too much money in that program this season to finish 6th in the Big 12. There is way, and this was softball, right? Softball at the beginning of the year, Texas Tech struggled. They struggled through the non-conference a bit and then finally put it together. They go to the national championship and they're a couple outs away. I mean, they're sitting right there to win the whole thing. And I believe that's how Tech football will be. You'll see maybe a game or two where they look sloppy. I think they'll win most of their early slate. They'll look a little sloppy though, and then they have to put it together. They're too good not to. They have tried to do the Ohio State route of let's build a multi-million-dollar football team. You know, we've heard the rumors of $55 million in their athletic department being thrown around in NIL. They're trying to go the route of picking up massive transfers, giving them a ton of money, and dominating. Top 3 transfer portal class in the country. How good of a football team can we build? And they got that Stanford kid to boot. So as I'm saying all this, I'm talking myself into Texas Tech being in Arlington. I think they will be. And Phil Steele has them at 6. If they finish 6th in the league this year, and this is a wild thing to say about Texas Tech, if they finish 6th, Joey McGuire is squarely on the hot seat. It might not be working out. You may need to veer away from, I like Joey McGuire a ton, but you would have to veer away from the good old high school football coach, who I think is a dying breed in college football, and go out and get more of a business mogul, a GM style guy who can game manage, but mostly manage a locker room, not be the hoorah guy. 20 years ago, Joey McGuire's the best of the best in college football. Today, with the way that money has diluted the sport, that's where things get really tough for a guy like that who wants to do things the right way.
Yeah, I think we've talked about what their expectations have to be. And I just think when you're investing that much money into a roster, I don't even want to. They've put this on themselves. This is not me, TJ in Tampa, coming up with this. But to me, I think they have to be in the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. I don't even know that you can spend that much money and say, we made it to Arlington. We lost a couple of games, made it to Arlington, lost that too. We went 10-3 and didn't make the playoff. I really think they have to be there. And I guess at 10-3 they could sneak in if they don't penalize. The Big 12 was the only conference last year that didn't get both of its big championship competitors in, but I guess they could sneak in at 10-3 if they're ranked high enough. But to me, it has to be a playoff appearance, and if anything less than that, man, feels like you really spend a lot of money to not do enough.
Yeah, crazy thing to say about Texas Tech, by the way, because they're perennial 8-4. We love them going 8-4. We've always loved that, and now it's like, oh nope, you must go to the college football playoff. Yeah,
which is crazy. No, maybe I don't know. Yeah, I can't talk myself out of that. Baylor 1, Utah 2. I know a lot of people are high on Sawyer. Baylor 1 is very interesting to me. I certainly don't think that's outside of the realm of possibilities. And then Utah bouncing back to have a really good year as well. Thoughts on those two?
I am stunned that we are seeing of the 2 schools from Utah in the Big 12, BYU at 8, Utah at 2 here. Very gutsy from Phil Steele. I'm not sure what he sees. He says Utah is a popular pick year to year in the Big 12 and the Pac-12 before that. I don't know why year to year. They've only been here 2 years, so I'm confused. Testament to head coach Kyle Willingham, which I agree with. Steele likes them as a second best squad in the conference this year to go to Arlington. I still have a lot of questions about their quarterback. Devin Dampier is good, and I think that he can be good, but I also saw DeQuan Finn at Baylor, who was a better quarterback on paper than Dampier, coming to the Big 12, get eaten up, spit out, and thanks to that, Sawyer Robertson became the guy at Baylor and one of the guys in the Big 12. So I just have I think Utah's offensive line is great. I think their quarterback play is just not proven yet, and I'm interested to see Utah jump from a 13th place finish to the second place finish in the Big 12. I'm not sure if I see that much. I am fairly high on Utah. I don't think they'll finish lower than 10. They're probably the top half of the Big 12 team, but 2 is crazy. And then Baylor, I graduated from Baylor. I'm a Baylor guy. They're probably the 4th or 5th best team in the Big 12. I don't see they're not one. They're not one. Yeah, they have a good running back, and Sawyer Robertson's solid for sure. Bryson Washington's going to be fun to watch. Dawson Pendergrass also very solid. They're not one. Their defense still gives me that LSU bowl game was Swiss cheese. Their poor secondary, their defensive line, the trenches are going to be a huge difference in that Auburn game. I think Auburn's going to outman Baylor there. Baylor can outcoach. I think Dave Aranda is a great analytical mind, a very good analytical football coach, not a great leader per se, has those tangibles, and so TJ, We'll see for the old Baylor Bears. I don't have a ton of confidence in them.
So last thing, and then we'll wrap. Iowa State, Arizona State, and then Kansas State. Do they have the best 3 quarterbacks? I'm really high on Sawyer too, so I won't exclude him.
What do you mean last thing? BYU's at 8, and you're burying the lead right now?
Well, I thought we already. Yeah. Okay, we'll do BYU too. But Iowa State, Arizona State, both your championship competitors last year, and neither of them make it back. And then, Avery Johnson also up there, Kansas State finishing 5th. I don't know, man. Like, I know he uses a lot of analytics and he's got a lot of data and stuff, but we're picking apart this thing like it's, Baylor's defense was cheese.
So I'm actively trying to look up the 2024 Big 12 rankings, so I can, because there's no way Phil Steele got it right last year, and there's no way that I think he gets it right this year when you consider that you just hit the nail on the head. The Big 12 from a quarterback standpoint, Rocco Becht to Sam Levitt to Avery Johnson, you're telling me all 3 of those guys will be out of Arlington? All 3 of those guys will be out of the college football playoff conversation? I'm not positive if I can exactly buy into that, and I'm not. Man, I'm really not believing, again, that we're going to see BYU at 8 with or without a really solid quarterback. Those are 3 quarterback-driven teams, no doubt, and they're going to rely on those guys to win. I think Avery Johnson is still underrated, though we said he was going to be a Heisman contender last season. He wasn't really that. And I also, okay, cool. Utah at 1, Oklahoma State at 2 last year for Phil Steele. That I was just burying the lead. So you're over there, TJ, like, oh, well, I know he's an analytical guy and reads a lot of books. All right, Utah 1, Oklahoma State 2. So that's what we learned about Phil Steele. He had Texas Tech at 10 last season. I don't know who hurt him in Lubbock. I'm not sure who. He also had Kansas and UCF in the middle of the pack, and UCF effectively fired its coach. Arizona State at 15, BYU at 14, Colorado 13 for him last year. So what is any of this but just beautiful, wonderful things to tack on the locker room wall?
Maybe he does maybe he does them counting the wrong way, and when he turns them in, they're just reading it like really 16 is 1 and 1 is 16. Maybe he's just doing it like in reverse order, and they didn't realize that when they put this article together.
If they did in reverse order, BYU would be like 9 then.
Yeah.
Them being in the smack middle it's not helping me whatsoever. And that smells of some. I know Phil Steele watches college football. Does he watch the Big 12? Does anyone watch the Big 12 right now?
Besides us.
Yeah, right. And I don't hate some of these. TCU at 7, but Cincinnati at 9. They were terrible last year, and they brought back a little bit of terrible this year, and they did okay in the transfer portal, but not elite. So the throw up in my mouth for some of these, and Phil Steele, even West Virginia at 16, I think is silly. I don't think West Virginia will be last in the Big 12. Maybe 12, maybe 13, not 16. Phil Steele gets a C+ in my report card for today.
The definition of mid. Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
Yep, at Locked On Big 12 on Twitter, or wherever you find your podcasts with Locked On Big 12, and on YouTube.
Thanks, man. Enjoy the 4th.
Always fun, TJ. You too.